So this morning I came out here to do some yoga and stretching. We have a little gap in where you're getting some rain. You can see it's kind of moist behind me and stuff. And it's supposed to be a couple days worth of rain. And I thought, oh, maybe I'll sneak outside and see if I can do some stretching while there's no rain. And I was sitting out here, and just as I was putting my mat on the ground, this bird made a sound that I hadn't heard before and like flew really quick, like up in the trees over here. And I thought, that's strange. Like it almost sounded like, I mean, it was a sound I'd never heard before. And I thought, maybe it's a new species, like maybe someone is migrating through. And um, so I always bring my binoculars out with me whenever I go do anything pretty much. And so I had my binoculars. So I almost wanted to look to see what that bird was. And I kind of turned that way for a second, but there was this instinct in me to look where it came from. I was like, I think something happened like this, and I need to look this way. So I looked up. I don't know if y'all can see it, but there's a tree. Let's see if I can show you. There's you might be able to see it. There's a snag up there. It's a tree that's basically dead. And I don't know if I'm showing it to you the right. Let's see, maybe there. I don't know, somewhere up there, maybe in the middle there. There's a tree that's dead, and oops, more people coming in. Let me let them all in. And so that's often where a lot of birds sit and perch, like the crows perch up there, everybody, and hawks that come in perch up there. There's like the songbirds perch up there. The woodpeckers go there every day. So it's just a very, very, I mean, as most of you might know, like snags, trees that are dead are incredible habitat for birds. And so, I thought, well, maybe I'll just look up in the snag. I'll check out, just to see if anything is happening up there. And there was two shapes I could see, because it's a good distance away from me, so I couldn't quite tell right away. One of them looked like a crow. In fact, I actually heard it, and so I was like, okay, there's a crow on the right, but there's a smaller bird on the left, and I'm not quite sure. Its tail was pointing straight down like this, and it looked like it had a pretty vertical posture. And the crow was sitting below it. So the crow was like, the smaller bird was up on one part of the tree. The crow was like on another part, but lower. And I was looking at them, and I thought, I think I need to get my binoculars on that bird. So I looked at the bird, and all of a sudden, when I just as I put my binoculars up, I heard this very high pitched call. And I don't know if any of you know what that is. We won't talk about it right now, because I do want to do the sit before we chat about any bird nerd stuff. So again, we can chat about this after, but just keep that in mind. There was a very high pitched call coming from somewhere in the trees over here. And then everything got very quiet. And so I was looking up, and I saw that bird, and I got an ID on that bird. And then what happened was, and sort of the mystery for you all to figure out is what that bird was. So then the crow flew off, that bird stayed, and the high-pitched sound kept going, and everyone was just quiet. There was just silence all around. And maybe about 10 minutes later, I could hear some nuthatches come in. They weren't here originally. They're coming in, and they were chatting for a moment or two, and then they just stopped, and you couldn't hear them anymore. And then the downy woodpecker came in over here, and then it just stopped. And so then there was just no sound, still no sound. And this is going on 10, maybe 15 minutes now. And then the doves kind of flew by, took like a swoop around. Nope. And they left. They didn't make any sound. They just kind of took off. And then a little while later, a broadwing hawk flew in, moved that bird off the tree. That bird flew somewhere over here, and the broadwing hawk hung out there for a while. And then I had to start to get some work done, actually make my breakfast. So I went inside, started doing that. And by the time I came back out, the original bird was back up in the tree. The broadwing hawk must have left. And within about, I'd say maybe 10 minutes or so, there was a nuthatch. Now this bird's about here in the tree. The nuthatch was higher up in the tree, and it was just calling and calling and kind of looking in that direction and calling, and always sort of keeping like the branch it was on in between it and it just kept like calling. It would never sort of go around it, but it would just sort of like look and call and look and call and look and call. And it did that for a couple of minutes, and then the jays came in. And there was 4 jays that came in. And then they did their like, like little pump handle kind of thing. They did that for a while. And then finally one of them took a jump down toward that bird that had been up there, and then that bird flew off, and I haven't seen it since. So the mystery is, what was that bird? If anyone wants to take a guess, but we'll do that after the sit. So I just kind of wanted to, like, prime the pumps a little bit for our sit, because for me, what happens is that, and this used to happen a lot more when I was in my 20s. I think I've learned my lesson, but that I would do bird sits a lot, and for many of the occasions, like, nothing happened, quote unquote, nothing happened. But then by practicing and practicing and practicing the skills that, Molly and I are sharing with you all, over time, what happens is that we become much more instinctive with what we feel and what we hear. And so there was something in me that keyed me off this morning to look away from the birds that I was curious about. I was like, oh, these must be a new species. Like, who's here? And so my curiosity wanted me to look this way, but my instincts were telling me to look the other direction. And I believe it's my strong belief, it's because I keep doing this practice over and over again, and keep sitting even when nothing happens, and keep practicing these skills. So without further ado, let's practice some of these skills. All right, so I think you're all, actually, is anyone here, is this anyone's first time? Dondi's here. Hi, Dondi and Claudia, Cindy, Barb. Great, great, great. I think everyone is, you're all veterans, you're the OGs. So, okay, great. Well, then you all know to go find a comfortable seat wherever you are, inside or outside. It looks like we have a little combination of both. And just let if you can be barefoot, that's great. And you want to put your feet on the earth, let your feet touch the earth. That's wonderful. If you are inside, maybe you could still take your shoes off and let your feet feel the ground underneath you. And if you would rather not do that, that's totally fine too. Just let your feet connect with whatever it is that's below your feet right now, below the soles of your feet. And just think about that we call them our souls. There is that connection that we can have with what is underneath us, with what's supporting us. So just feel that support right now. Whatever that energy is coming from the earth, even if you're a couple stories above the earth, she's still down there holding us up. Just let yourself feel that and tap into that right now. Also, taking a moment to honor and give a sense of gratitude to that place where you are residing in this moment, to the ancestors of that land, to your ancestors, to those that walked the earth before your feet touched that earth. Just acknowledging all that came before you on that land. And that it's in connection, all of that is in connection with you and the soles of your feet right now. And allowing your body to receive that. And so while you're doing that, you can find a point to look at off in the distance, as far as your eyes will let you possibly see. If you're inside, you can look out a window. And if you don't have a window available, then just whatever is the furthest thing away from you in this moment. And then, as we all know to do at this point, you can just let your gaze soften. So you're still focusing on that one point in front of you, but then your peripheral vision becomes very soft. It's a way to take everything in, not just one thing at a time. And when you do that, notice what happens to your breath. It's another good opportunity for us to come back to our breath, to our bodies, almost in that full circle. So we started at the soles of our feet, we went out to where our eyes are gazing, taking in everything, and then coming back into ourselves. And just imagine that cycle, that big circle from the earth and then out toward what you're looking at, and then coming back to you in a softened way. And now, without losing your attention to your feet and to your eyes and what your eyes are seeing and receiving, bring your awareness to your skin, noticing in some places it might be a strong breeze that you feel, in other places, barely anything. But see if you can just tap into your skin and notice what direction the air is moving in this moment. Even if you're inside, there's still a direction that maybe the internal air is moving. And now expanding out with your ears, almost in the same way that you do with your eyes. Your eyes are nice and soft right now, receiving everything. Allow your ears, the receptors of your ears, to expand out and be as receptive, as soft and receiving as your eyes are right now. Just scanning the horizon of sound. And notice if there's any particular sound that evokes an emotion in you right now. And if there is, see if you can tap into what that is and where you might feel that in your body. Where does that emotion reside? And sometimes when I say this, it's not so much like, oh, I hear a car and it makes me annoyed, that kind of a thing, but more, maybe I hear the jays and it makes me feel anxious, or I hear a robin and I feel elated. So tapping into sort of what the sounds that we're hearing evoke in us, which is slightly different than hearing something that you maybe don't want to hear, or maybe even excited to hear. Like maybe you hear someone's car pull up and it's someone you're excited to see. There's a different kind of tapping in, a different kind of emotion that's evoked. That's more thought based. This is more feeling based. With that, there's like a thought associated with the traffic, for instance, like, oh, the traffic makes me mad. So just let yourself feel into the sounds, even feel into the sights that you're seeing. And so we'll practice something today. It's almost like a breath. It's just going to be a lot longer, but you won't have to hold your breath that long. You can just take natural, normal breaths. And so I'll key us off by saying in or out. And so when we're in, we're going to bring our awareness with our ears and our senses to the sounds and sensations near to us. And as we come back, as we come inward, you want to scan the landscape and just see if there's any particular sound that calls your attention to it and maybe even evokes an emotion. And just pause with that sound. Notice what it is, notice what's happening. And then when we're going out, so when I say out, we're just going to just listen, just receive, not trying to pinpoint any one sound, just taking all of it in. So it's this practice of expanding and listening to everything all at the same time. And then when we bring it in, that's where we want to get more focused, more detailed, more curious about the specific sounds. And then we'll go back out and then we'll come back in. And so the out and in might be a whole minute long, it might be 30 seconds. So just let yourself just be here and I'll mind the timeliness of that. And so I'll make sure I mute myself so that your sounds are your sounds. So we'll start just by with our breath first. We'll just go in and out a few times with our breath. So take some nice deep breaths in and let it go. Another time in. And this time as you exhale, just send your awareness out as far as you can go onto the landscape, just receiving everything. And we'll just let it go out for a little while. And bring it in. And now back out. And as you're going out, just receiving all. So you're not trying to pick out any particular sound. You're just letting everything be as if it were one sound. And now bring it back in. And as you're coming back in, imagine that you're like the sand at the beach, filtering out the sound. You're acting as that filter, you're being more discerning. And regardless of what layer that sound appears on, just let yourself stay with that and be curious about that. And then when we go out, which we're going to do right now, we'll go back out and just receive everything all as one. And go ahead and bring it in. And now back out. And this time, when you come back in, you can be receiving more than just the sounds. You can receive the scents in the air, the sights, the sensations in your body. So you can add a couple layers onto the sounds. So we'll be bringing it in right now. And so this will be our last time going out. And this time, if you'd like, you can close your eyes for both the out and the in and see if anything changes for you this time. So we're on our way out. And then bring it back in. Okay, so go ahead and send your gratitude out to the landscape, to all the sounds, sights, feelings, scents that are in this experience with you right now. Giving thanks to them for all that they are in their lives right now, and how you got to be a part of that story, part of their story, and they're a part of your story this morning. And just check in with yourself and see how many different emotions you might have felt. How many different sensations were you able to tap into throughout this short little time? What energies or dynamics were you aware of? It's my noon whistle. And I'd love to hear any stories, any reflections anyone has from their time this morning. Feel free just to wave your hand if you want to share, or if we can't see you on the screen, then you can just do your virtual hand raise. I know for me, I'll just share to get us started that this morning, this whole morning, there's been this balance between contentedness, like people just doing their thing, with quite a bit of upset. Um, just right now, there was a Carolina wren that was really upset. There was a cat, my neighbor's cat, I saw it walking a lot, or much earlier today. And that felt like the same alarm it was making when the cat was around. So there's sort of like this balance between on edge and, yep, we're just doing our thing, looking for food, talking to our friends, and like, oh, on edge. And um, just aware of that. And then the layers kind of underneath all that. For me, it's underneath. Maybe it's over. Maybe it's in other places for the birds and whatnot. But then there's the insects. That's a constant high pitched sound. Maybe you can hear in the distance or all around. There's the insects that are going, and then some frogs that were croaking and doing their things up in the trees, and of course the traffic. Yeah. So how about other folks? What was happening for you all? Yeah, Claudia, go ahead,
Okay.
and then
Yeah.
Jermaine.
One thing that, I'd feel myself being pulled away a little bit now and then because I'd noticed something in the yard that, oh, I need to do that, but then I had to pull myself back. But there was a fair amount of the time that I felt like I'd gone back to that childlike sense of wonder where you're not really self-aware, but somehow you're more aware of your surroundings. And there's just this kind of a magical, wondrous feeling about it. And I thought I need to do that more often.
Oh, that is the
I like
best.
to
That
be
makes me
there.
so happy. Yeah. Did you find, Claudia, was it more when you were sort of going out or coming in, or just the whole time? It didn't really matter.
I think it was the whole time. I first noticed it when I was going out, and it just, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how to describe it.
Yeah, don't. It's yeah, with the childlike wonder, it just is.
Yes,
Oh, that makes me so happy.
me
Yay.
too. Thank you.
I love that for sure. Thank you. And Jermaine, I saw your hand next, then Suzanne.
Yes, it's a funny day here. I'm on the East Coast, and it was raining earlier. And when we started, it was very quiet. There's nothing. I haven't seen one bird at the feeder today yet, and I heard a little bit of noise at the business across the street earlier, but then that stopped. I couldn't even hear the refrigerator. There was just nothing, and that got to be very content making. I just was like, I like not. I didn't even hear the refrigerator. It's like, okay. And then I did hear the chimes went just once. There's no breeze at all, and I just felt like I was with the birds because they're all hunkered down. They're hunkered down because of the rain. And while we were at the sort of the last third of our meditation time, the rain picked up a little bit. Now it's steady, and I could hear the pattering on the leaves and on the deck and on the. That was a lovely sound too. We've been in a bad drought, so it's just really a nice sound. And I just feel like I'm one of the birds, hunkered down
Yeah.
and loving the rain and just waiting to go to the feeder when it's more convenient, and I enjoyed it very much.
Oh, oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, I know that the feeling, and I was thinking about that when this particular bird had flown in earlier. I thought, wow, like I thought they were taking the opportunity to get out and feed because we had this break in the storm, for a little while. I thought, oh no, no one can get out and feed right now because this these couple birds were around, and so um yeah, it made me very aware of their life, and it sounds like you're feeling very bird-like today.
Well, should
That's
I
right.
guess at your bird or should I not for
Oh
now?
yeah, let's do that maybe after a couple more stories, and then we'll do
Okay.
some blessing. Yeah, but if you have to go, let me know, and then we'll make sure that we okay, good, good. All right, Suzanne.
Hi. Um, Southwest Colorado, of course. So about a week ago, there were three birds of prey circling and calling over my property. I live on a river. And through my binoculars, I'm pretty sure it was two adult red tails and a juvenile red tail,
Mhm,
sort of in its sort of white juvenile face.
mhm.
Um, and then the last few days, it's just the one juvenile. And that thing is circling and calling and circling and calling, and it's just heartbreaking. It's plaintive. Um, and I wanted to ask you, is that the natural order of things? In like early September, did the parents take off and then the juvenile is on its own?
That's a great question. I can answer that for sure. Does anyone else have anything they want to chime in about before I do? Well, Yes, it is the very natural order of things. And it's a really, if you're someone that, again, like in Suzanne, you always sort of evoke this in me, I think that, or you, because of how tapped in you are, and all of us are becoming that, the more we feel, the more we're aware of all this. We're aware of all of it, you know, so we can feel what's happening. And yeah, so what happens this time of year is many of the juvenile birds, you know, it happens for the songbirds much sooner, and it's almost we don't hear it in the same way that we do with raptors. With the raptors, the young ones have been used to getting fed by the parents, and they call, you know, they'll call, mom, mom, feed me. The parents come in, they feed them, and then they get satiated and they're calm. Mom, mom, feed me. Dad, dad, feed me, whatever. But when the parents decide or determine that it's time for the young ones to do it on their own, the parents leave, and that's it. There's no second chances. There's no like, oh, maybe I'll just come back and like, you know, I know he's at college and everything right now, but maybe he just needs a little extra money, you know, like I'll just sneak him some, or I'll send him like a care package. You know, there's no care packages coming for these guys. They have to do it on their own. And that's why a lot of young raptors don't make it. Just because, yeah, so the first, it can be up to a week, but the first at least 5 days, 3 days, 5 days, sometimes all they'll do is just cry. And they're just like, where are you? You always came when I called before. Where are you? You know, and then eventually they figure it out and they get hungry enough and they're just like, I guess I got to go do this, you know. But that time period, especially if you've had some that have been nesting in your area or near your area, and then all of a sudden the parents are gone, it is heart-wrenching. I got to hear that once with a great horned owl. I was doing a workshop, and it was like a week-long workshop, and we started right at the time when the owl's parents had left it. So all night long, this young owl was just calling and calling and calling. And eventually, as the week went on, we actually started to see it hunting for grasshoppers during the day. It tried to catch an adult flycatcher during the day. Like it was going for anything. So anyway, it is the natural order of things. As a tapped in human, it can be heart-wrenching to hear that. But just send it some good, strong vibes. Like, you got this, kid. Like, your parents gave you all the good, you know, everything you need. So go off and do it. Like, you got this, you know? Yeah.
Thanks.
That help. Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome for sure. Cool. Anyone else have a story they want to share or something from this morning? Or yeah, Julia and then Della.
For some reason, my yard is full of hummingbirds this morning. And, you know, it's not unusual to see one or two, but I mean, they're just everywhere. And I don't know whether they're migrating or, I mean, in Oklahoma, the ruby-throated hummingbird is really the one we have, and it doesn't overwinter here. So I'm wondering, you know, this is a pretty good stop-off point for them because I have a lot of stuff that they like. But
Yeah.
I was captivated by them. I sort of, I had my own bird sit because I was watching these things.
Yeah, great, great. That's awesome. Well, what's your guess? What do you think?
Well, I don't know that much about hummingbirds, but I do know that their other birds kind of come together and migrate as a more as a group. Um, Purple martins. This is a staging area for purple martins, for instance, and chimney swifts will congregate here and kind of feed and then move on. So that would be my guess.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a couple of things are happening right now. Depends on where you are in the country and sort of what phase of development you're at and sort of which particular hummingbirds you have. But sometimes why people see lots of hummingbirds all of a sudden at their feeder is for sure migration. The migration has started. It's full force. It's happening. And so every bird sort of has its time when it leaves and it moves. And so often when people see a lot of birds at their feeder, it's usually the birds from the north that are coming in, so it's possible that your birds, if you've had hummingbirds there all season, it might be the same ones, but they might also have moved on and maybe you're getting the birds from the north now coming in also the other thing that can happen sort of in conjunction or separately is that up until this point, the parents will be feeding the young hummingbirds like insects and spiders and things like that. And now the young hummingbirds will be coming to the feeders. So what you'll see is, when there was one or two hummingbirds around, now all of a sudden there's like five or six, and that's usually because it's the young ones coming with the adults to the feeder. So the numbers can grow. And that's also why even as they're migrating, there's so many, because you get the young ones and the adults. Whereas before, on the way up, you were getting the adults, or at least even like the first year, whatever. And now there's just like so many more. So yeah, a bunch of things are happening right now, and it could be both. It could be one or multiple. So it'd be interesting to look at them maybe more closely through binoculars and see if you can tell if they're juveniles or adults. That would be a fun challenge.
Okay.
Cool. Thanks, Julia. That was great. Della, Della.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this week I've been watching whitetail kites. So I wanted to follow up on your raptor story because I experienced something similar to that this week. And it all happened very fast, as you said.
Uh-huh.
And so I walk for exercise along the beach. And so you've got the ocean on one side and you've got golf courses on the other side. And in between, there's a lot of scrub, bushes and things. And so the pathway kind of goes through that. So I was looking for the whitetail kites. Kristi, you're frozen.
Oh, am I?
You were.
I think I was just sitting very still, but maybe I was frozen.
Okay. So you heard all of that.
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So I knew to look in the tops of the Monterey cypress trees for the kite because normally I see them there. And so I was looking and I spotted one, and it was an adult. And then I'm walking along and I hear something that sounds like a cat, sort of a sound. And I thought, what is that? And so I stopped and I watched and looked and I spotted it. It was a juvenile white kite. And so I watched them for a while. They didn't do too much. Second day I went back and I spotted the adult. I spotted two babies this time. And the adult had a vole. And was eating it itself. It was not feeding the babies. Okay. So, and this all happened very quick. I mean, that was the next day. Then the next day I went back and they were all flying, and there were four. There were two adults and two juveniles, all flying. And it was like they were doing touch and goes. They were diving toward the ground, and then they would pull up. And they would dive toward the ground and pull up. So that was like the fourth day. Yesterday, I saw no kites. So we'll see whether the babies are on their own now, if they've left. But would it happen that quickly, 1 week?
Oh yeah. I mean, it can happen in it just happens in a day. The parents just decide and they're gone, Yeah. So and it depends. Like with kites, I don't know if they tend to be more communal or if I really don't know much about them at all, but there are some birds, like woodpeckers are a great example. There's some woodpeckers like the northern flicker. They will stay with their parents for quite a long time actually. And so I'd be curious to learn more about the kites and just know maybe I don't know, maybe they migrate together, maybe they move together, maybe the parents leave them. I don't know enough about them. I think birds that are more communal will stay together longer before the young ones sort of go off and sort of find their own group or their own family. But but yeah, I'd be curious. I mean, that'd be cool to follow up on as you you know, keep watching them, Della. Are
Yes,
they, do they overwinter there, or they move
they
on?
do.
They
Yes,
do.
we have at least I usually see one kite um, almost every time I go down there to the
Oh, okay.
beach, and they've been for years, for years.
So
Yeah,
that'll be interesting to see. So I think, yeah, we would love to hear your report next time,
yeah.
and what you keep observing. So, and you can sort of choose. I mean, because you know you have them so much, I would say maybe before you do a bunch of research on it, just keep seeing what you notice, like what you observe, and then, you know, because the research is going to be there no matter what. But I feel like your observations are so unique and wonderful that yeah, that would be exciting to hear what you come up with.
Well, that was my excitement for the week.
Yeah, that's really exciting. That's amazing. I would love to see a kite. It's been, I think I saw one once in my life, so that's awesome, Della.
You know, they look like angels when they hover.
Oh, that's so incredible. And are the juveniles, are they more brownish? Like what's, how do you know
Yes,
that?
they
Yeah.
have a rusty breast. Mhm.
Okay. Okay.
And around their face a little bit. Yeah, yeah.
And are their tails as long as the adults?
I don't know. I haven't. I'll have to look, observe. I've got lots of photographs,
Oh, great,
so I
great.
can go back and mine my photographs.
Yeah, I know, like with, there's a number of birds like swallows, magpies, and swallows in particular, like the brown swallows that who have the long tails. The young ones won't have the long tails yet, and the same with the magpies. If anyone's ever seen a magpie, you know they have those beautiful long tails.
Yes.
But the juveniles don't, which makes them all like sort of, you know, off balance for a while. But yeah, so I'm curious with the kites if they're, if that's another distinguishing feature for the juvenile. So it'd be fun to learn that from you.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, let's, okay, Cindy, we'll take one more and then we'll do the mystery. Cool, go for it,
Okay,
Cindy.
can you hear me?
Sure thing. Yep.
Okay. I want to give you feedback on your exercise and then an observation. The in and out exercise was just incredible for me. I noticed so much more than I would normally, because normally I'm so focused on where's a bird and not the bigger picture.
Wow.
So that was just incredible. And then at the very end, when you had us close our eyes,
Mm.
it switched, you said, see if it makes a difference. It switched me from observer of my experience of what I'm seeing to being part of.
Mm.
Immediately, it just, I was part of rather than separate, watching, sensing, listening. So that was the effect when you said, see if it changes anything at the very end, the last in and out when we closed our eyes.
Wow.
That was pretty amazing. And then as an observation. So then right after that, when that was over, I heard a sound like, I'm segueing back to your mystery bird, a sound like you talked about, but not as high pitched perhaps as yours. And of course, I didn't recognize what it could be. So I was wondering, is it a starling or what? And but it did sound like an alarm call, perhaps.
Oh.
So I paddled around where I could look the direction it was coming, and on the top of the tree was a logger-headed shrike.
Oh yeah.
That's a That's a predator. It's not a raptor, but it's a predator for those of you that don't know. So there was a threat there. That's all I have.
That's all. That's amazing, Cindy. That's beautiful. I love, yeah, I love where you went with all that, and that you also were able to feel and hear the distinction with that alarm call and tap into the shrike. And yeah, that's cool because the shrikes, I would imagine that I've only been around them a handful of times. I love shrikes, and but their alarm calls, it would be interesting because they wouldn't elicit alarms from everybody, but just certain species, you know. And so that's like it's sort of a very specific kind of alarm call. So that's rad that you,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I don't know what made the alarm call, but I noticed in the tree below the shrike, both an orange crowned and a yellow warbler. but
Uh-huh.
Oh.
I don't know. I don't know what made the call.
That's so cool. Cindy, thank you. Wow,
You're
well done,
welcome.
everybody. You're all rocking it. Bird language masters, y'all. This is great. All right, so let's see any guesses about the mystery bird. I don't know if everyone got to hear the story in full. I was telling a story about this bird that I saw and heard and sort of felt cause some disturbance here in the forest around my house for a little while. So anyone have any guess? I see that Anat, who is, I don't think she came back. She had to leave. She gets, oh yeah, so you didn't see her message. It's a message just to me. She made a guess. Maybe I won't share it just yet. I'll share it after people make a couple guesses first. So I gave you a couple key potentially key ID features for it. Not that I gave you any sense of like the bird itself, but based on other factors, you might be able to narrow down who the bird was. So any guesses? Was it Jermaine? You had a guess, right?
Purely, I guess. I was thinking the alarm call might have been a chickadee because they're so nosy, Parkerish, and have to be in on everything, and they love to warn everybody about everything. But since it was smaller than a crow, my first thought was kestrel. But then I think merlins are pretty small too. So one of those two, but that was just, like I said, a whipping it out of the air guess.
Just whipping it out of the air. Okay, well, I'm not going to say yes or no yet. I'm going to let other people guess, but thank you. And the I will share with the alarm. I don't know. I didn't see the bird. Typically, it's the robins that make those calls, but I have witnessed a chickadee make the high-pitched call before as well. Yep. So it likely could have been. I didn't see or hear any chickadees this morning, but again, because by the time I got out, everyone was kind of, it just sort of happened right as I got out there. They could have been there and I didn't know. So that's a likely possibility. Yep. Okay, what do other people think? Any other guesses? Or concur? Does anyone concur with Jermaine? Go for it. Even if you're not sure, this is the fun part of it. It's just like, let's just hear and then we can sort of whittle it down. Linda, did you have a guess?
Yeah, it's just a wild guess, and it's just based on something that just came into my mind before we did our sit, when you were telling us the story. I live in Northwest Montana, and we don't have a lot of them, but we have shrikes here. And that was what came into my mind this morning when I heard you're talking, because sometimes when the shrike is around in our yard, usually you see them on fences, but sometimes they'll be up in a tree. And it just creates a huge change in everything that's around. So anyway, so I just putting that one out there. That's what came into my mind while you were talking. So
awesome. Okay, great. Sweet. All right, other folks, anyone else want to take a stab at it?
I was thinking kestrel too,
Okay.
smaller bird, but still a raptor.
Yeah. Well, you all did great. Yeah. So it was. I wasn't sure at first. I had to like take a while to really look at it. The first sort of the energetics of the bird, I felt Merlin, and then I was like, well, I often do that. I'll think Merlin, and it's really a kestrel because they're so similar in size. The Merlin's just like an inch taller and like a little bit longer on the wings. But there's something it just has this like fierceness that's just a little different than the kestrel. It's just sort of like, ugh, versus the kestrel is just like kind of a bit more regal, like I'm just gonna sit up here and observe. Whereas the Merlin's like, oh, like a little bulldog, kind of thing. And it had sort of that like, even though it was calm, it just still had this like fierce little bulldog energy to it. And eventually I did see some markings, the tail facing me. It had a big dark band and then two lighter bands, and then it ended in white. It was a very thin white and there's like the tail facing me, not the back side of it, but the front, sort of the underside of it. I saw bright yellow talons, and then you could see on the head. The head's always what does it, tricks me up sometimes with the Merlins versus the kestrels, because they have similar facial patterns, that mask that they wear. The helmet, some people call it, is kind of similar, but overall it was just sort of darker, and there were vertical stripes going, down on the bird. And everything was it was sort of darkish, but the tail is what really gave it away in the end. And again, it's just that the energy of it. So yeah, it was a Merlin. And it was rad to watch. And what was neat was there's a juvenile catbird over here that it was the first one that like it couldn't wait. It was just sort of like it was just sort of getting like agitated, and it wanted to do something. It was like 20 minutes and nobody had said anything, and then finally the catbird's like "Meow, meow." It was like calling and calling, and I was like, oh, you better be quiet, and that the other sort of giveaway is the crow didn't care, right? So the positioning is really important to look at when you're trying to sort of analyze a bird language scenario. And so the Merlin was higher in the tree and the crow was a bit lower, and the crow's back was turned to the Merlin, which is really important, because if the fact that it had its back turned, it meant that it felt pretty comfortable. It didn't really care. It wasn't going to stay around for too long, but like it just was just like whatever, like it's so much bigger than the Merlin. The Merlin's not going to mess with the crow. And so it eventually did fly off. And then there were jays in the area, and I was surprised. I was actually really surprised that nobody was mobbing it. There wasn't, like, for the first 20 minutes, 25 minutes even, before the red-shouldered came in. And that's why I almost started feeling bad for the Merlin, because I was like, oh my gosh, it has sat long enough where the birds were starting to make noises. Like I could hear the cardinal pair start to chirp back and forth to each other. I'm like, oh my gosh, I think it's going to get someone, because they're starting to come out. They're starting to like, I don't think many people saw like where it actually was. I think that whoever flew up in the trees definitely saw it and was like reacted to it, but I don't think anybody else saw it. So I don't think anyone really knew where to look for the danger. They just knew, and that with that high-pitched alarm, that's a clear sign that there's a raptor in the area. And so everyone knew to hunker down, but then after 20 minutes, nothing happened. So birds are like, all right, we gotta get out and eat, but then the red-shouldered came in. I mean, not the red-shouldered, the broadwing came in and moved the Merlin off. And so I was like, oh man, if I was at the Merlin, I'd be so bummed, because I'd be like, oh, it was like just the right moment, like I was so close. But it came back after the red-shouldered. I don't know what made the red-shoulder leave, but it eventually left. And then the Merlin went back and sat there for a while. And then the jays, the second time is when the nuthatch was alarming at it, and then the nuthatch called the jays in, and then once the jays had it, they were like, they weren't going to let it stay around. So it definitely got scared. But I think it's still here. I feel like it's not given up on this spot.
Do you have gray jays, or were they blue jays?
They're only blue jays here. Yeah, we up in the mountains more, like up in like Vermont area, they get the gray jays up there, but or now they call them, was it Canada jay or something? But we don't have them down here. Yeah. And we also, just to Linda, to answer you, we don't have shrike here. I don't actually know if they're I don't think they're even in the state. That'll be interesting to look up, or if they are, I've never seen one at my house. It's possible that they're around here. It's a really good, when you said that, I was like, I've never seen one. I don't think we have them, but I don't really know. So
they're very stealthy. They're very, you can walk right by one sitting on a fence, and unless it's a white fence and they make a movement, sometimes you wouldn't even know. They're yeah.
Oh yeah, wintertime. In the wintertime we get the northern shrike, but I don't think here, like I've seen them near the coast here, but I've never seen one like, kind of in my zone.
Okay.
But you're right, that would have been a great guess. I don't know that the jays would have cared as much. Have you ever seen the jays respond to the shrike?
Not specifically, no, not specifically. I haven't seen them react. I just know that when they're around, everything is, the energy, you can feel an energy shift, and everything gets really quiet. And everybody is really careful for a while, and they'll just sit there like they're a statue for the longest time, and then I'm sure that's when they'll move in on something. But a lot of times they'll get they just get the smaller birds. I think a blue jay would probably be alarmed, but I don't think it would be really in danger from a shrike. But I don't know that for a fact. I don't-
Yeah, and that is one way you can again, like I was saying, like with the crow not really caring. I don't know that the jay would care so much. So that'd be another thing I would think about. Like if let's say I didn't have binoculars and I was just looking up at that tree and I was watching, and I obviously it was obvious that they were jays because of their sounds and their behavior. And if I saw the jays being upset about it, that would be one good indication for me that it probably wouldn't be a shrike, just because the
Yeah.
jays probably wouldn't care about the shrike,
Oh,
you know,
yeah,
because
yeah,
they're so much bigger. Um,
yeah.
but if it was just the small birds and the, you know, then I'd be like, oh, maybe it is, you know. So yeah, so that's, I don't know, it's just fun to play with that, and I thought it was just great. It just like happened right before the bird sit, so I wanted to share that with you all.
Well,
Hopefully
thank you.
something from
That
that.
was
Yeah,
cool.
for sure. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, so Anat had guessed sparrowhawk, which I think technically is the sparrowhawk is also known, or the kestrel is also known as a sparrowhawk. Is that right? Yeah. I think in other countries they call them sparrowhawks, and I think like old time people used to call the kestrel the sparrowhawk, but we don't really call it. I mean, some people still call it that. Not everybody.
I think they called the peregrines chicken hawks.
Chicken hawks. Yeah. Yeah. All right, everybody. Well, thanks so much for joining me today. This was really fun and just so beautiful to hear what was evolving and opening up for everyone. And so, may you have beautiful, blessed weeks, and may this feeling continue and carry forward for you all.
Thank you, Kristi. That was great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joy. Thank you, Julia. All right, I'll see you later.
Yes.
Thank you.
Bye, Jermaine. Bye, Suzanne. See you, Barb. Bye, Claudia. Bye, everybody. Bye, Barb.